Good afternoon. It gives me a great pleasure to welcome Mr. Rahul Bajaj, a doyen of Indian industry. We are extremely privileged that he is with us this afternoon. We are indeed grateful to you, sir, for having accepted our invitation and our request to accept IMA Lifetime Outstanding Achievement Award. We all have reservoirs of life to draw upon, of which we do not dream. One may feel overwhelmed by presence of people like Mr. Rahul Bajaj, but if one goes through the grind with an attitude of learning, after careful observations and identifying key points which are at core, it develops a perspective, objective openness to rationality. Friends, we must note down which we find most relevant for us. While listening to Mr. Bajaj, we will be certainly doing self-introspection. We may find some specific points which needs thought. And to develop thinking and reasoning of higher level, we need to devote as much time and effort to it as to any other skill. I am sure most of us will use this event as an opportunity that will help us in our future journey. IMA Board, on behalf of Indore, I must extend my greetings to you, sir. Thank you for coming over and very warm welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. May I now request Dr. N.P. Jain to please come up and read the citation.
फ्रेंड्स, हमारा बजाज आज हमारे बीच में है। Let us accord a warm welcome with a loud applause to him. तालियां बजाइए। He is an eternal young man with restless energy, passion for innovative action. He implemented innovation when we didn't even know the spelling of innovation, years back. And he has a pragmatic perception and no-nonsense approach to problems that he faces. He has answer to every crisis. Whenever I meet him, and I've had the privilege of being with him at some of the board meetings which he chaired, I always had the feeling, and I'm sure you share my feeling, Robert Browning's poem, "Grow old with me, the best is yet to be." We look forward to your lasting contribution to Indian industry, to Indian economy, particularly as the doyen of Indian industry and its global ambassador. The traditional Indian welcome for a distinguished guest like you is Atithi Devo Bhava. But to a young man like you, I would say Atithi Dosto Bhava. Be our friend, be our guide, and be our philosopher. राहुल साहब अपने स्कूल के ज़माने में बॉक्सिंग चैंपियन हुआ करते थे। वो इनकी जीन्स में ऐसा घुसा कि उसके बाद पिछले 50 सालों में जो भी काम इन्होंने हाथ में लिया, इंडस्ट्री का या वर्ल्ड इकोनॉमिक फोरम का, he has boxed all his way to tremendous success and achievement. Friends, may I now present the formal citation. Charismatic global ambassador of Indian industry, Rahul Bajaj, has straddled with great aplomb and flourish India's industrial landscape, tempered and shaped by the tumultuous decades spanning pre and past independent India. He has been a catalytic player in India's transition from a closed economy to an open one that now competes with the rest of the world. He opened a new chapter in the history of industrial innovation and entrepreneurship right in the thick of the license Raj through his innovative creativity, far-sighted approach and forth-sighted approach coupled with integrity and transparency. His success as the Badshah of India's scooter industry has become legendary. Corporate social responsibility is in his blood veins, having inherited the traits of compassion and good governance and humanism from his grandfather, the celebrated late Shri Jamnalal Ji Bajaj, whom Mahatma Gandhi fondly called his fifth son. Rahul Bajaj has proved his acme as a visionary and action-oriented management wizard in a wide variety of assignments ranging from Chairman, International Business Council of World Economic Forum, Confederation of Indian Industries, and New York Stock Exchange. IMA feels privileged to honor such an outstanding, iconic personality with IMA Lifetime Achievement Award for the distinctive contribution you have made, sir, to Indian economy as well as to corporate governance on the occasion of IMA's 24th International Convention on Reclaiming Ties with Destiny. May I request all the directors of the board to please come on this stage for the formal ceremony.
We are privileged to have Mr. Rahul Bajaj with us today, a prominent industrialist. He is the chairman of Indian conglomerate Bajaj Group. Under his leadership, Hamara Bajaj became the fourth largest two-wheeler company in the world. His achievements become more noticeable in the backdrop of the difficult days of License Permit Raj. He has served as a member of Rajya Sabha. He headed the Indian delegation to World Economic Forum for 10 years. He was appointed the chairman of Indian Airlines, the first from private sector. Mr. Bajaj has received Padma Bhushan and Achievement Awards from Economic Times, Ernst & Young and CNBC TV 18. He is also amongst few Indians who have been honoured as Knight in the Order of the Legion of Honour by the President of French Republic. He has also been awarded with Alumni Achievement Award by Harvard Business School. He spearheads the CSR initiatives of the Bajaj Group, which includes Jamna Lal Bajaj Foundation, Shiksha Mandal and several social organizations. He is the chairman of Bharatiya Yuva Shakti Trust and Ruby Hall Clinic. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Rahul Bajaj to inspire us.
Good afternoon, everyone. A function like this is a minor problem. You can see me, I can't see you. And I'm the one who's talking, and unless you boo me, you are not talking, so I don't even know whether you are listening to me or sleeping. May I begin with, in all sincerity, in all sincerity, very, very sincerely thank the Indore Management Association. First of all, for inviting me here this afternoon, giving me this opportunity to be with all of you. Huge number. I didn't know that such a covered hall existed in Indore. I'm told its capacity is 5,000. Even Mumbai, and I say even Mumbai because it's supposed to be the financial capital of India, it doesn't have a covered hall like this, with this capacity. And I've seen the list of persons to whom Indore Management Association during the last many years has bestowed its Lifetime Achievement Award. Outstanding people, each of them, really outstanding. Sometimes wonder how I fit into that category, but again, I'm really grateful and thankful to the IMA for the honor they have just done to me by bestowing their Lifetime Achievement Award on me. My sincere thanks to them and to all of you. Indore has been the center of enterprise in Madhya Pradesh. What it owes to geography and to history, I do not know. I leave it to you to decide. I'm a believer in the important role of the past in fashioning us. We should seek inspiration from the past to create our future. But we must not wallow in the past. 5,000 years ago, we used to have aircrafts. Maybe we did. Be it an individual or an institution or a nation, the destiny is made possible essentially by itself. by the person or the institution or the nation's efforts and hard work. I'm, of course, old-fashioned enough to believe that the grace of God on us is essential for our success. When Jawaharlal ji spoke about our tryst with destiny on the night of 15th of August 1947, he spoke at the culmination of our freedom struggle. Freedom was a destiny which we had achieved. The first country of any magnitude to have achieved independence from the biggest colonial power of that time, 100% through non-violent means. Currently, though, we have proved many Cassandras wrong, and we have quite many achievements to our credit. We have nothing to be ashamed of. But it's my habit, I don't see the glass which is half full. I always see the glass which is half empty. We have to fill that part of the glass as well. And so I believe we still have a long way to go. Can you hear me there? The list of things we need to get right, be it growth, inadequate infrastructure, a lot of unemployment or underemployment. Our per capita income is $1,500–$1,600 per annum, when the developed world is $45,000 per annum or above. Lack of good governance and very poor health services and education. Our list is a long one, but all of us have to achieve for our 1.2 billion people. After a decade, we are reviewing our options and promising reform. This is good. Let me quickly and roughly lay out what we have going for us and what issues we need to tackle. What we have going for us, and I consider it very important, is a democratic system. It gives us a lot of problems. But I prefer those problems to a midnight knock on my door, which happens in, or used to happen, even now happens in a lot of countries in Africa and Latin America. The large size of our market, you have heard about it. Every businessman in India and abroad is tempted by the size of our market and our rising middle class, our entrepreneurial class, our being a nation of the young. You've heard about the demographic dividend quite a bit. And the willingness, this is important, the willingness of our people, especially the youth, to work hard for a better tomorrow for which they aspire. This willingness stems, and to me this is very important, from the strength of our families and our social values. Our joint family system, it's a little bit disintegrating in the big cities, but our family system doesn't exist really, at least to the same extent in the United States, Europe, and the developed world. If we have all this going for us, then why is our per capita income so low? Why have other nations, be they Singapore, South Korea, even China, they were all at our levels or below our levels in the early 70s, as late as early 70s. Why have they gone so far ahead of us during the last 40 years? Were we sleeping? For many reasons, but I believe it is because of our mistake in pursuing a misdirected and wrongly implemented socialist pattern of industrialization between 1956, the Avadi Resolution, and 1990. We wasted resources on the public sector and stymied the private sector. We developed a language of rights, not responsibilities, and created a huge burden of distortions and subsidies in our economy. From the early 70s, the quality of our governance declined and the government became increasingly corrupt and ineffective in providing even basic services to the people. In terms of mentality, we replaced the British with an administration and political apparatus which mimicked the British pattern of administration. Small example. Nothing wrong with that post. We need that post. But we still have the designation of a collector as the head of district administration. What does he collect? Arrears of land revenue, I don't know what. Added to this, we banished the notion of merit in the government and introduced a notion of seniority and entitlement. In my view, ladies and gentlemen, no one in this world is entitled to anything besides human dignity and equality of opportunity. Only those two things, equality of opportunity and human dignity. The rest, he or she has to earn for herself. And unless we have this mindset, we cannot progress. If the private sector has progressed even to some extent, and it has, it is because it functions on the basis of merit. I'm not recommending or advocating a Jungle Raj, but I am recommending a fair and humane society. And also we have to seek to be fit and strong, not run after the survival of the weakest, at least beyond a point. We have created a lot of unhealthy practices in our society. Unless we confront them, we will not be able to create a decent future destiny for ourselves. Ineffective, corrupt governance has created widespread tax evasion and an anti-people political and administrative structure. It has created a disincentive to be honest and an incentive to be dishonest. And it has created a maze of strangulating controls. The huge and misdirected subsidies. We need subsidies for the poor till we can give them a job. But only for the really poor, really below the poverty line, not for the rest. And all the inefficiency and corruption that goes in granting subsidies and in the PDS, etc. Now with direct benefit transfer to the bank accounts, maybe things will improve. The huge and misdirected subsidies and scams like the 2G and Colgate are clear symptoms of this malaise. The collapse of the public education and health systems at all levels has hurt us deeply. The auto rickshaw driver who meets me in Pune, he says, "Saab, मेरे बच्चों को हम private school में भेजते हैं. 50% of my income goes in sending 2 of my children to private schools because government school में कुछ पढ़ाने को ही नहीं मिलता. And I want my children not to be an auto rickshaw driver, but to be an engineer or a doctor. That's where all our taxes go, direct and indirect. The private sector cannot fully substitute the government in these areas. And if our 5th standard students cannot do 2nd standard stuff, as repeated surveys of Pratham and others show, then how can we talk of a demographic dividend? Our labor and tax laws have moved 90% of the employment in private industry into the unorganized sector, resulting in lack of competitiveness and low wages and bad working conditions for those employees. And our huge government and higher wages in the government at lower levels, with poor productivity and work culture, this has resulted in fiscal deficits and no money for investment in badly needed infrastructure. Higher middle levels and higher levels, the government still pays badly. But at the lower levels, please check. Very often they are paying higher than even Bajaj Auto pays to its lower level people. Forget other people. We pay a minimum of 30,000-40,000 a month or more to our unskilled worker. But the government pays more. I don't mind they're paying more if I get productivity and a proper work culture. Hopefully in the coming years with the new government we'll get it, hopefully. Our huge public sector banks repeatedly looted by politicians, not only the loan melas, they are melas. किसको पैसा मिलता है और वापस आने का सवाल ही नहीं है. Looted by politicians and, I must admit, businessmen in collusion with bank officials to create bad loans whose cost is ultimately borne by whom? Money doesn't drop from heaven. It's borne by the honest taxpayer. We know that we have repeatedly chosen wealth distribution over wealth creation. Yes, you must distribute wealth, but first create it. And we see every day we have chosen political expediency over doing the right thing. Do the right thing. Just don't go for votes. And now our wrong policies have come home to roost. Since 1991, however, we have been changing, even if unevenly and not fast enough. The liberalization of 1991, yes, it removed some fundamental constraints on business, gave it freedom to trade, freedom to upgrade, and the freedom to start a new business. And the ensuing change has shown in stark terms what private enterprise can achieve. And the development of the IT sector has been an eye-opener. It has created global respect for our skills. It has created a large number of well-paying jobs, very well-paying jobs, well in excess of 3 million jobs just in Indian companies, not IBM and others, Indian companies in India. And how did this happen? Very competent people, of course, but there are many other competent people. It happened because in the IT sector, even now, but when it started 20 years ago, there were no government regulations, there was no government control. The government didn't have the capability to decide how to control, thank God. For quite some now, but now you see the old system fortunately is disintegrating gradually, thankfully so. For quite some time, voters have been rooting, as you know, for Bijli, Sadak and Pani rather than subsidies. Started in this place, in Madhya Pradesh, and has even affected a state like Bihar. Change has been in the air, and the parliamentary elections we know of last year, the nation voted, we all know, for growth and development rather than on narrow caste and communal considerations. And this has happened now in state after state, be it Maharashtra, Haryana or Jharkhand. And I believe that this process, very much hope, will continue and should continue. And it's incumbent on all politicians and all of us, young and old, to ensure that this continues. Ladies and gentlemen, let me now outline what I believe politicians, businessmen and civil society should do and how this can be facilitated. Politicians should at last realize the damage done to this country. Out of the 200 countries in the world, where are we? Not only per capita, take any index, child mortality, consumption of energy, various indices, human indices. Forget ease of business doing, which our Prime Minister now says, I don't know how, where it is, out of 190 we are 186. He said, let's come into the top 50. He's right. From 186, you can't go to top 5. Nobody will believe him. But top 50 is no good. It's better than 180, yes. But okay, let's go to the top 50 in the next 3 years. Depends on us, but depends mainly on our government. Government instead should focus on efficient provision of services of health, education, help in agriculture, build the required infrastructure, and provide to all of us and all businesses a light but effective regulation of the private sector. Today we are over-regulated and under-governed. We should move to being lightly regulated and well-governed, where the efficient and honest are encouraged. Again, I mentioned this, and inefficient and dishonest are punished. We must be honest enough to admit just that there are crooked politicians and corrupt bureaucrats. We have some bad eggs in the business community as well. Hopefully, in percentage, less than amongst politicians, but that is no consolation. And to do this, it is necessary to minimize the role of black money and criminals in elections. Public funding of elections is a necessary step in this regard. Also, we need elections only once in 5 years and simultaneously to the Lok Sabha and all the Vidhan Sabhas. It can be done democratically. We can follow a system which Germany follows. I'm already taking a lot of time. I don't have time to go into detail. And businessmen should run their businesses well and with integrity. You can still make a lot of money. In the long run, it's better to run it with integrity, and that's my experience all my life, last 40, 50 years. We should grow in size, reach, and capability. We should create and share wealth. Businessmen have to be ambitious for their companies, but we must all set for ourselves the high standards of governance we expect from our government. For this, it is necessary to establish a meritocracy in our companies. If there is a failing in our business, the reason often is that we are lenient with our children. We have to judge them by the same standard as we would judge a professional executive. Too many companies have been ruined by incompetent sons and brothers being allowed to take the company to the cleaners. We have to ask whether the family is for the company, as it should be, or is the company for the family? If it is former, only then we will survive in today's comparative world, leave alone prosper. Family businesses are a reality in India and most parts of the world. They have their strengths and weaknesses. Again, I don't have details to go into detail and explain this, but I'm sure most of you know it as well or better than I do. The challenge is to exploit the opportunities, the advantages of a family business by capitalizing on their long-termism and capitalizing on the natural incentive. They don't have to be given stock options like the professionals have to be given. The natural incentive available, and we must groom our succession in a way, as I said, don't be very easy with your children. Children normally are better. See, both the boys are more intelligent than I am. They are doing better than I'm doing, but I never told them that. They would have got a swollen head if I had told them that. Today they have combined together and kicked me upstairs as a non-executive chairman. Good for the business, I think. Family businesses, especially all businesses, need to be ethical, as I said earlier too. No large business can be successfully run without an ethical underpinning, because in old times, license, permit, Raj, shortage economy, protected economy, maybe things were different. In today's competitive economy, no self-respecting professional will work for an unethical company today. Businessmen need to be fair to their stakeholders, be it employees, associates like dealers, that is vendors and suppliers, and dealers, customers and shareholders. Please note that I have mentioned shareholders last, though they are important, we know they provide capital. But it is employees and associates who create most of the value in a company, and the customer, of course, as you know, every business school teaches you, is king. But before all these business schools like Harvard and all started teaching that, 80, 90 years ago, some of you would know, Gandhi ji said that, our customer, हमारा ग्राहक, business के लिए सबसे ज़्यादा महत्व का आदमी है. I do not personally support the mandatory 2% CSR spend. I mentioned it in an open meeting twice to our then Prime Minister Manmohan Singh and people like that time Pranab Mukherjee and Chidambaram, Rangarajan and Monte Ahluwalia. You got enough mandatory laws in this country. Don't mandate my generosity and my conscience. I want to spend on charity, I will. I don't want to spend, I won't. But on laws, when I was in the Rajya Sabha, as you know, different parties had different views, different parliament members had different views. On the 2% CSR, 750 MPs were of one view. It is a must. सोचते थे हम भी बहती गंगा में हाथ धोएंगे. मेरे पास तो कुछ मिलेगा नहीं उनको, दूसरी कंपनियां डर के मारे भले ही दे दें. But while I don't like the mandatory part of it, we in India have a tradition of doing this. In 1905, 100 years ago, Gurudev Tagore wrote that India has survived because the better off on their own take care of the weaker sections. Who built the schools at that time? Who built the dharmshalas at that time? कुछ सेठ होता था ना शहर में. Anybody who was better off used to spend money in many things for the weaker sections. So we have to do this, we have to do our due in society. Because now that it is compulsory for certain companies, not for everybody, for the bigger companies, we should engage in what the government has been unable to do. Ladies and gentlemen, the world is open for business. For 30 years we were taught the benefits of free trade and globalization by America, Europe and Japan. The last few years the boot is on the other leg. And now they are getting protectionist, but this is another story. The world is open for business and it values innovation and competitiveness. Where have Google and Apple and even the Chinese Alibaba come from? So the fault is not in our stars, the fault is in ourselves. Why are we not Googles and Apples or even Alibabas? If we see this clearly, if we understand this clearly, we can begin to progress. What this broad sweep survey by me should make clear is that in any system, school, hospital, municipal corporation, government, company, ghar mein, efficient management is a must. Management is what is responsible for the present and future prosperity of an institution. It sets the direction and makes sure that the objectives are achieved. As Peter Drucker said many years ago, management is a task. It is not embodied in a position or a degree. One grows into a management role. One essentially learns from doing management tasks. It does not come with a coat and a tie. Humility, willingness to listen, and empathy for people help us in doing our job better. And this is usually not taught in business schools. But life teaches us this. A business career is a marathon, it's not a sprint. We are in it for the long haul. A reference was made to the World Economic Forum. I've been going to the annual meeting of the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland now for the last 35 years. And I was there again this year from January 20 to 25, minimum temperatures of minus 10 degrees centigrade. Chairmen and presidents of the top 1,000 companies of the world, 40 to 45 presidents and prime ministers of countries. There is no other business meeting like this in the world. Everybody tried but has failed. And to go to Davos, which is not that easy to go to, and it's darned expensive to get there. And to attend the thing. It's only by invitation. Everything is discussed there. You don't have businessmen and politicians. You have doctors, you have artists, you have Angelina Jolie, my driver once. He was supposed to pick me up in a hotel and he was always on time, and this time I came out of the hotel and my driver was not there. हम रुके 10 मिनट बाद आया और सर सॉरी सर किधर गया था यार स्विस गाय sir Angelina Jolie came and she was looking for a car, her car was not there, so I offered my services. Why are you clapping? Because he did not do his job for me. But more seriously, to give you a flavor, and then I'll soon after that end, because I think I've spoken more than my required time. Everything discussed there, art, music, culture, everything you imagine. Not counting private sessions, and there are many private sessions. Forget the receptions and dinners, they're crazy. Go on till 2 in the morning and then you get up at 7 in the morning to start work at 8:30. There are 300 official sessions in those 5 days. 300 sessions, each very important. It's like a smorgasbord in Scandinavia. And in 5 days, how many can you attend? Maximum, if you are very hardworking, which I used to be the first 20 years of my life, now I take it easy. But maximum you can attend, how many? Each is hour and 20 minutes, 25, 30 sessions out of 300. Imagine the variety that is available. But to give you a flavor, I list 14 subjects. There are many, but 14 not subjects. Problems which the best top people in the world, including presidents and prime ministers of countries, Angela Merkel was there, Nicolas Sarkozy used to be there, all top people. 14 top risks or problems of the world. Poverty is, of course, a basic problem. Education and health, of course, are problems. These 14 are lack of leadership, 1. Number 2, weakening of representative democracy. Number 3, intensifying nationalism leading to terrorism, ISIS. What happened in Paris? What happened in Peshawar? 4, global governance failure. We have it very much in India. 5, profound political and social instability. 6, fiscal crisis in key economies. We had our problem, but we are improving now. 7, persistent jobless growth. Growth, but jobless growth. We have the same thing, resulting in high unemployment. That's why we need better education and skill development. Everybody need not be a master's or a doctorate. Follow the German system. After standard 12, what we need is skill and vocational training. 8, severe income inequality, income disparity. Very interesting. 5, 7, 8 years ago, this was not a subject for discussion in Davos. The richest of the rich are there, the elite are there. They don't worry about income inequality. Now, last 3 years, even in the International Business Council of the World Economic Forum, where the top 100 are there, when you ask them what are the major problems facing the world, income inequality is always one of those there, because social turbulence will take place and you cannot go on. The rich cannot enjoy and say, hell with the poor. Those days are, fortunately, I hope, are going away. 9, rising pollution and increasing incidence of severe weather events, storms, floods, drought, global warming or climate change, that is. 10, water crisis. Of course, food crisis, but food, religion, and land is what world wars were all about. Food, religion, land. The next world war may be for water. 11, rising geostrategic competition. Don't forget Ukraine and Russia. 12, international trade issues, WTO. 13, future of the internet and all the hacking that takes place. You read about in the US what happened to Sony by supposedly North Korea. And 14, gender parity. They are also concerned about gender parity to give their proper place to ladies. World leaders, including our leaders, politicians and businessmen, small and big, will have to be ready in their own way to tackle these problems. Friends, Indian management professionals are good, are very good. I see them every day in India. The heads of world's biggest companies come from our ranks. Satya Nadella of Microsoft, Indra Nooyi of PepsiCo, Anshu Jain of Deutsche Bank, and many others, Ajay Banga of MasterCard. But the task ahead of us needs thousands of outstanding leaders, not dozens, thousands of outstanding leaders. And leaders are not those who occupy corner offices. They are those who deliver in whatever fields they may be. You may be a doctor, you may be an accountant, a lawyer. I have great faith in our people, and I have great hopes from the young. Why? I'm president of Shiksha Mandal, an educational trust with over 9,000 students in my hometown, Wardha near Nagpur, and the energy and vitality of the students invigorates me. Most of those present here, even the youth, are from the privileged sections of our society. It is our opportunity and our obligation to do something big, not just for ourselves, to do something big for our country in our lives. I wish all of you very fulfilling lives. Thank you, and Jai Hind.